Greetings and salutations. This is Abdelhadi with The Bitter Truth, where we may not have all the answers, but we're going to ask an awful lot of questions. You can also become a bitter pill or a spoonful of sugar, the medicine going down, by joining the Patreon page, patreon.com/The Bitter Truth. You can also get that and more on thebittertruth.info, which is the show's official website. And we've got fabulous swag to make your life better. So there's that. And we appreciate any help that you can do for the show. You want to buy a t-shirt or whatever, that'd be great. My guest today is Jennifer Jajeh. And she is an actress and a comedian, multiple credits to her name. But and I YouTubed some of the scenes from her play or one woman show, Heart Hamas, which if that title makes you giggle, it should. It's fucking awesome. And the idea of the play is really cool. And I'm told also by her Wikipedia page that she's also super pretty. So, you know, there's that, but you're not going to get to see that because, you know, you're just listening to this thing. How you doing, Jennifer?
I'm great. How are you today?
I'm good, man. Just, little hungover. Went to band practice last night and drank whiskey and hung out, and that was that. So that's my life. But yeah, it's just enjoying, you know, summer.
Nice.
How's it going in LA?
Hot. I had to close my windows for this interview, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, what is this about?
Okay, well, before you broil, we'll wrap this up. Probably like
I'm like, why am I sitting in a sunny window on like a 90-degree day? But LA is LA, man. It's kind of like Walking Dead, you know, outside. There's a lot of craziness, a lot of homelessness, a lot of COVID madness going on. It's a little bit of a clusterfuck, as they say. Yeah, man. I was home last month for a high school reunion and see my family and stuff. Cause I was born and raised there. I came here about 6 years ago. And yeah, man, it was just, I don't miss it. I miss my family, you know, my mom and everything. But I don't really miss the LA proper, you know. But you're an actress. I'm sorry. Yes. I mean, it's here if you need it, and it's good to visit it in doses and take off when you.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm going to be back there in October, I think, for a little bit, and I'm doing a favor for a friend of mine for about a week. I'm house sitting for him, so I'm going to take that as an excuse to see my family again. But I'm just like, you know. I don't want to be out there that long again because I was already there. So I'm kind of like, I can just come back next year and that's cool. But he really needs the help. I'm like, okay, great. So is what it is. But well, shoot, okay. So you're an actress, you're a comedian.
Yes.
You're also Palestinian.
Yep.
And were you born there and came here, or were you born here in the States?
No, I was born in San Francisco.
Okay.
My family left Palestine in the 50s.
Okay.
My parents left separately because obviously they're not the same family. Insert, you know, cousins marrying them each other joke. And
I'm half Palestinian. That's just what they do.
So yeah, I was born in San Francisco. I grew up in San Francisco in a huge expat Palestinian-American community, Christian. Oh, wow. Intense, like every street corner you ran into one of your cousins. Right.
And San Francisco is not a big city anyway. I mean, you can run into people there.
Oh yeah, and when you have like a huge extended, like both of my parents have like 5, 6, 7 siblings. I don't even know. So it's like every freaking person in San Francisco is like somehow related to me.
Right.
Every Palestinian person, and so it's like any corner store, any restaurant, any bar. You're like, God damn it! I'm like running around with a fake ID at 17. How am I like? I can't get away with anything.
Right. Well, and I don't know. You're hot, so I don't know how you didn't get away with the fake ID, because that's the idea. You let the cute girls into the bar, even though you know you may get busted, because you know the illusory promise of sex brings in the male patrons to try to talk to the pretty girls to buy more drinks.
All right. Well,
that's the business model. That's the business model.
Really bad business model.
Yeah, that's just
busted by.
You know, the idea is to not get busted, but that's what you do. So, okay. So, hey, what's the environment like out there, man? Because obviously, you know, you're pretty outspoken, you know, on what's been going on, especially lately. And it's been some years, because Heart Hamas was a while ago, and you toured that play for what, 5 years, 4 years?
I toured that till like 2013. I toured it for like 5, 6 years. It was really long. You know, people kept being like, keep touring. I'm like, oh my God, how long can I keep touring the same show? You know?
Right.
And it's like, how long do you want to be on the road? That was the other question.
That's right.
Because being, you know, the play did well. I took it all over the world. I took it all over the US. I took it to colleges. I took it to theaters. But I thought I'd get to LA and settle down and make some TV money, and I made a little bit of TV money, but it wasn't what I was hoping for.
Right. Well, do you think the play hindered that? You think did you get some gas from that? I mean, because obviously it shows off your chops. You can handle your lines. You're telegenic. You engage an audience. I mean, so that those are good things. But then obviously the subject matter did that kind of mess with you a little bit?
I mean, I'm sure it did. And no one's going to come out and say it, but I'm sure doing a pro-Palestine tragicomic show about the occupation and my life in Palestine during the Second Intifada is not the show that casting people and managers are like clamoring to represent you.
Right. Well, but I got a couple of I got an Egyptian friend of mine, and I got an Egyptian acquaintance. I used to know his sister a lot better than him, comedian guy. And I don't know how much he's working these days, but my other friend, he's working a lot. But he's like you, like you don't look, quote, you can fit in, you can play Latina, you could play Arab, you could play whatever. Did your agents or management get you up for roles that were like not necessarily Arab, but like, hey, we want you to play this Italian chick or the, whatever. I mean, or is it like, oh, they don't want to see you because they think you're too hot a property, you're too political, or like, how was that?
Well, I think before I did I ended up doing my show because originally when I started off as an actor and in the Bay Area. I was in New York for a while. I was in the Bay Area for a while. And, in early 2000s, nobody was looking to cast Palestinian Arab characters. There were no women. If it was like, if you were going to be casting an Arab, it was going to be like an Arab male terrorist character. And so there were no roles for Arab women.
Right.
At that point. And then after 9/11, of course, there were like, okay, we'll have the token Arab woman in a hijab, who's being,
right.
Attacked because of 9/11 racism. And so, and you, like, as you said, like, people were like, I would go into auditions where they were like, you don't really look Arab. And I was like, okay, white lady from Nebraska, I'm glad you'd have decided what Arab looks like, right. Number one. Like, that was so frustrating to me because in my mind, I was like, first, you've never met any Arabs. I know you don't know any. And like, Arabs look very, look at you. You're very fair skinned.
I look like an Irish Jew.
Exactly. They're blonde, blue-eyed Arabs. There are, all sorts, all colors. I remember when I was a kid, my mom was like, let's go to Florida and meet our cousins. And my sister and I met our like second cousins, and they were like red, curly. Oh yeah.
Half my dad's side of the family, because my mom's Brazilian, right? Okay. And she was half Swiss. So there's a hot mess right there. My grandfather on that side, he's like 6'1", blue-eyed Swiss guy. And then he married my grandmother, who was a 4'10" Amazonian Indian, dark, right? Oh, wow. And then she came out, her family came out looking like, the Belgian consulate. And then the other half came out looking like Latino, right? And my mom is like white skin, green eyes, black hair. My dad was this angry little redhead guy. He was like 5'3". He had another brother who was about a year younger than him. He was about 5'3". So anyway, my grandmother was little, and so but with my dad, he was like a 5'3" redhead, and his brother, who was a year younger than him, was a 5'3" regular Arab looking guy. And when I went back there in '88, long story why I got there, but I got there. Half my dad's brothers were like blonde haired, blue eyed, just light, and then the other half looked like fucking Arabs, right? But it's just like, it was just kind of and then my grandfather on that side, he was a tall white dude. He had a blue eye because he lost one eye, but he was a fair guy. And my dad's mother was shorter and dark. So it was just this crapshoot. You have he came from 13 kids, my mother came from 14 kids. So it's just like, you're just going to have a genetic crapshoot.
Well, it's also like how many civilizations have come through and conquered the Palestine?
You got the Turks ran roughshod. I mean, if you know anything about Armenians, they're largely Caucasian. I mean, white Caucasian, and they'll tell you that the dark ones were because of Turkish insemination. through for the last couple of 100 years when they're just kind of, charging through, and the Ottomans weren't exactly, playing patty cake with people. So it's just, and there's no monolith, like an Italian, or a Mexican or whatever. It's like, there's no monolith. Oh, you don't look Mexican. It's just kind of silly.
Right. Yeah. Well, in casting, though, that's how they operate. They like
Right.
to have an Arab look. And they were
Right.
like, your hair, you don't have curly hair. You don't look, your features aren't typically Arab. And so it was frustrating for me because I did this whole bit in my one-woman show called, which was like, Viva Mexico. And it's like how I get cast a lot as like Hispanic or Mexican. And
Sure.
And then they'd be like, well, are you really? And then I'd be like, I don't know. Do I need to be? And so how then I would lose jobs because I wasn't really Mexican. And I was
Right.
like, Jesus, fuck.
Well, and it's like that Bill Burr joke. It's called acting.
Right. Well,
It's called acting. It's like when what's his face, and the joke that Burr makes is when what's his name from Breaking Bad, played a quadriplegic, and that community freaked out because he really wasn't a quadriplegic. And why do you have an able-bodied person playing a quadriplegic? Like, well, because it's called acting, schmuck.
right.
Right. And it's the same thing with this. Like, like with my one friend, he plays Italian, he plays Mexican, he'll play American Italian, like, Goomba type guys. But he's from Egypt. He came here about 25 years ago by way of Chicago. And that's how I met him in LA when we did comedy together. But that's the thing. That's the reason I was asking about if you were getting any heat because of your past or whatever. Obviously, you're Googleable, right? So people would see the play. Did your reps ever like confront you and go, hey, you got to really tamp down the Palestinian stuff or whatever?
Well, yeah. I mean, definitely I've had people be like, you've really got to stop promoting your stuff online. Like, you've got to, like, okay, it's fine if you want to do this show, but like stop stop being so public about it. And I'm like, well, then how do you promote a show? Like, what are you talking
Right,
about?
absolutely.
How do I be more public? So it's like, you would think that they would want you to raise your visibility, and they were like, can you just not be so visible? Can you not be so obvious about being political and Palestinian? And so, I just had to kind of make a choice I felt like it was a crossroads where I was like, do I just run with this direction, or do I kind of chill out and cool it off? And I just decided, look, I got to be who I am. I am very political. I like talking about Palestine. People like listening to me talk about Palestine. I like writing jokes about it. And so that's kind of the direction I've been pushing. And it's interesting because I do get a lot of attention for it, but at the same time, I'm positive it has shut down a lot of career opportunities for me.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, like, I worked in the record business in the late 80s and 90s, right? I played like in 5 different bands when I was a kid, and did it till probably about my late 30s. And the Jewish guys that were cool. They didn't care. You could tell too. You could tell, like, and then the ones that had an issue with it, they hear your last name and they're like, oh, Abdelhadi, what is that? Well, and sure as fuck ain't Italian, and then you tell them, and you're Palestinian or whatever. And then, and then they always negate that, like, I'm half, right? So like, I'm half, I'm half Palestinian. My mom's from Brazil. And that goes right in one ear out the other. As soon as I say Palestinian, they get like, oogla boogla, But then the guys that were cool. Right. And I've dated more than my handful of Jewish girls. I've had a couple long-term Jewish girlfriends. Right. And they were obviously fine with it because, I had one person like ask me if I ever thought about converting. I'm like, dude, I'm practically an atheist. Converting to what? Are you kidding me? You're kidding me. This is as open-minded as this is going to get. All right. Like, right. It was just, anyway, but yeah, it's like the people that care about it. And I don't mean care in the good way. I mean, the people that are bothered by it, you can see right away. Their questions are different. It's more pointed. Right. And then they'll just say weird shit, about the media. It's like, oh, well, like, somebody I know here was like, she's like, oh, well, that's just terrible. No, they're trying to kill Israelis. Well, did you see them march through the street and yell death to Arabs? Did you see that? Because that's happening, and they just want to have this narrative based on the movie Exodus. And you're kind of going, come on, man, but no, that's why I was just curious if you were getting a lot of heat for that. And, if that was like, impeding, things that you could probably further your career.
Well, I do have friends who, with the last thing that was the last massacre, what is the word? In Gaza. Like,
massacre is a good word, yeah.
This past May.
Yeah.
people like to, use all these euphemisms like incursion or situation, conflict. No, it's the last massacre. I do have friends who were being really outspoken, Palestinian and non-Palestinian, and who did get calls from their reps who were like, hey, like, you need to cool it off. Like, if you want to keep working, you got to settle down on this, political talk on your social media and
right.
kind of, but I have seen, I will say this last May, I have seen a huge, I feel like it kind of was a watershed moment, and people who do have decent careers, or people who are working regularly in the industry, or even A-listers, were definitely taking a stand in a way I've never seen before. Now, some of them backpedaled, like Mark Ruffalo.
Yeah, that was kind of disgusting.
Yeah, that was bad. I was like, unless they're like threatening to murder his family, there's no like, what?
He's got enough money. He can walk into a bank right now and fund 10 movies with his name.
Exactly.
No questions asked. I mean, for him to worry about the next $20 million Hulk film or where the fuck he's going to do, I was really kind of disappointed by that.
I was super disappointed, and I was like, listen, unless they're threatening to murder your family, there is no excuse. You are in a position that you do have so much power.
Sure.
Like, what could potentially be the threat that you would completely like do a 180?
Right.
It was just disgusting. So he's dead to me, and that's the end of that. But
he's dead to me. I tear my clothes. I spit on his shoes. He's dead to me. You understand?
I'm even like saying like, people, just please don't pull a Ruffalo. Like, do not pull a Ruffalo. We need you to like stay strong. But people like Viola Davis, a ton of people were speaking out and saying this is not cool.
Right.
And the half Palestinian supermodel sisters,
Wait, who? Where? Which ones? I don't know who they are.
Okay, well, I'll send you. There's.
Thank you.
There's a
half Palestinian. That they sound good. Are they liquor store heiresses? Because if that's the case, then that would be awesome.
I think their dad was like a like a real estate guy, and he married some sort of model, and so they have supermodel daughters, and half Palestinian, half Dutch, maybe. I don't know. I don't know their backstory. I mean, they're yummy. Beautiful, but they're also like 25. So.
My floor is 40.
A little,
my floor. I can't.
A little out of
my floor.
Out of I would say out of your wheelhouse, maybe. Not.
Yeah, I can't. I just can't. I just can't. I can't. I stopped dating girls in their 20s when I was about in my early to mid 40s, and then I matured late in life, so whatever. But at this point, I can't. I just cannot. I just cannot.
No, when I have 40-year-old friends who like end up dating a 28-year-old, I'm like, dude, come on. Like, are you going to be that stereotype? Are you going to be that archetypal?
Well, I didn't. It's not all I did. But if they kind of came floating by and we got along and had stuff in common, then I mean, I'm single. I wasn't married. It was not like I left my wife for a 24-year-old at the gym. It just was I was at a party and she was at a party, and that's how that goes down. But then, I've dated women my age. My last girlfriend was like 4 years younger than me. So it's not like I'm some kind of a troll, but, just, why does it
yourself out of the ditch, digging yourself out of the ditch right now.
Listen, a dog licks his own balls. Why? Because he can. So I did it as long as I could do it. And then I just can't. I just, like I'll go downtown sometimes, you'd be in a bar and you overhear the conversation. You're going, junior mints. They're just junior mints. It's adorable, but I cannot do it. I cannot do it. I'm going to be 58 next month, man. You're supposed to say your age these days. I don't give a shit. But yeah, man. I mean, but so the Palestinian supermodels, they're kind of being outspoken. I mean, honest to God, you're the second person, Palestinian, that came on this show, and I must have talked to 30 of them. Anytime this subject has come up, so far I've had an Israeli, an American Jew with dual citizenship, a Spaniard, and a Mexican come on and talk about Palestine and the Israelis, but no Palestinians would come on the record. You're the second one. So Suhair Nafal came on a few weeks back when she won that lawsuit.
Oh yeah,
against the Israeli government in California, and then you. And when I do talk to them, they're like, "Hey, can we talk about climate change?" I got climate science guys coming out my ass. I don't need that. I need you to come on and talk about inform people about what you know, or what your experience is.
I had to dump their boyfriend because all he wanted to do is talk about climate change. And I was like, I know you work in the industry and you're doing really well, but can you please post about something besides climate change, dude? It's like,
Yeah.
that's the fallback safe activism. It's like, I'm still an activist, but it's like, no, you're just, really honestly, you're just a fucking pussy because you don't actually want to talk about the things that are scary because you don't want to put yourself out on a ledge. And it's like, what's the point of like having a safe, I mean, those are the choices you make. Do you want to have a career and keep your mouth shut? Or do you want to actually say the important things and maybe have a different kind of career, but maybe not reach the level you could have had you gone a different route?
Well, I mean, in the 80s, I was playing in this one band and, we weren't the Beatles, but we were doing pretty well in LA and, we had management and one of them I was dating and the other one I wasn't. But they were both Jewish.
Yeah, that would be real awkward if you were dating both of them.
Yeah, that would be weird. It's a special management company. But the one that I was dating didn't care, didn't give a shit. Her parents, her mother didn't even give a shit. Her mother liked me, but her dad wasn't a big fan of it. But then the other one was a full-on Zionist, right? Because when I went there in '88 and got back, it was interesting. She'd come to band practice. We had these band meetings like once every couple of weeks, and they would show up, and then she would just go, "Oh, did you see what happened on the news today?" Or whatever. Or like, first she asked me a bunch of questions about the trip. And I told her, it was like, what it was like dealing with Israelis. And I was on the wrong end of an M16 often, and pissed me off that my taxes were paying for that shit and right? And then finally, after the fifth or sixth time she did that, I said, hey, you know what? Here's the thing. We could talk about this anytime you want, but these management meetings are for you to come and you're wasting these other three guys' time talking about this shit. I mean, not that they don't care, because one guy was a big Amnesty International volunteer guy. So he, my singer, so he was, all about that kind of stuff. But it was just, it was just her little way to go, like to kind of stab at you, just starting like, and it was annoying, and then at one point, yeah, it just was weird, and I've run into that, but then also, for the most part, I didn't have a whole lot of animosity, right? Like people will argue with you and try to tell you why, 1948 was fine and Israel was fine, right? But it's a trip. It's a trip, and it's a trip in this country with supposedly all the democracy and blah blah blah. That when this comes up, if you talk about BDS or anything like that, people lose their shit. And then there's like 30 states now that have anti-BDS laws, which is scary because you're curtailing my freedom of speech on behalf of the government of a foreign country.
Right. And Americans don't quite I don't know if they don't understand that or if they don't care, because you would think they would care if it was Mexico or if it were Haiti or if we were fighting for Russia, then they'd be like, holy fuck, we can't have this. But when it's Israel, it's like, that's really the question. It's like, do people not understand or do they have blind allegiance? That's what I haven't figured out.
I think it's a combination. I think it's blind allegiance, but playing dumb on purpose, right? And also because Arabs are so demonized. Okay. I remember, before the sixth grade, because of the Arab oil embargoes and Munich in '72, I had more fights than Muhammad Ali as an amateur, right? Before the sixth grade. I mean, because I was the only like Arabish kid in my school, right? My real name is Brahim, right? So they all knew my name. I grew up there. So, I'm sure that, dad's watching the news on TV, right? He's all fucking Arabs. And the kids are like, well, I know a guy. Oh, okay, I'm gonna kick his ass. He stole all the oil, fucking asshole. And then they start telling you shit like you stole the oil. Kind of go, yeah, because the apartment building that my dad had was like, yeah, great. It's the oil's in the boiler room. We have all United States oil. The Saudis shipped it over to us. It was just really fucking stupid, man. And then it chilled out by the time I got to high school, but it was still, I get shit like sand nigger and camel jockey and stuff like that. It was just, yeah. And I didn't even know I was a white guy till I got to college.
I mean, I didn't either, because when I was doing my college application, and then I was like, wait, Dad, what do I put? Like, all of these are so weird. None of these are our option. And he's like, yeah, you just put white. I was like, we're not white. And he was like, well, we are white. And I'm like,
well,
wait
technically, and I found this out when I tried to get free money for school, right? Technically, the Middle East is white. And right. So then I didn't qualify. So then I went with my mother on the Latino side. Hey, she's Brazilian. And this is funny. The rest of South America, right? it doesn't matter if you're white, purple, whatever. If you're from any South American, Central American country, you qualify as Latino, except for non-indigenous Brazilians, which means if you're of European descent and you're not an Amazonian, only Amazonians can get free money if you're Brazilian. You cannot get free money if you're Brazilian, if you're white. So I qualified as white. So I was like, what kind of fucked up program is this?
You were like the colonizer Brazilian. Right. That's your background.
Yeah. That hegemonic Brazil, they got rid of the Portuguese, and boy, did they take over South America, man. They just ran roughshod over South America. It's just, but I think that the only point I was kind of make was, we have a system of a history of demonization in this country. Right. So you look at World War I, right? We hated the Germans. And then World War I was over, and then we hated the Russians. And then World War II came, we hated the Germans again. Then it was over. Then we hated the Russians. We hated the Russians for a long time. And then we started hating the Arabs, right? Because we got bored. We get bored of who we hate, right? We start becoming familiar. We get bored. We need a new enemy. So it's like the Arab Hun coming to take your daughters, and invade your homes and eat your...
But we also needed to satisfy our complete insane need for oil that's so off the charts. And we needed to make sure that we demonized the people and created enough chaos in that region so we can manipulate and control the resources.
Absolutely. This shit's not rocket science, but what you just said, most people don't know.
I mean, most people don't know a lot.
No, they don't.
Americans are very, we have been very well manipulated by our media and by our propaganda system. And we believe what we're told. The media is garbage for the most part, mainstream media, even leftist media in the US. It's like, unless you're self-funded and Patreoning it or funded.
Yeah, that's right.
Then you're pretty much
everybody seems like they're auditioning for either Fox News or MSDNC.
MSNBC. I do a lot of podcasts, and all these people who call themselves lefties or progressives seem like their podcast is entirely an MSNBC.
That's right.
audition.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait a second, I came on because you told me you were a progressive. What are you talking about?
Right. No, I'm in Austin, Texas. So I have names for these people. I call the Republicans the Crunchy Reds, and I call the corporate Democrats the Chewy Blues. And except for 4 or 5 of my friends, I'm surrounded by Chewy Blues. Whatever Rachel Madcow says goes. And if they saw it on PBS, then it's even smarter because it's PBS. No one ever pays attention to the end when it's Archer Daniels Midland Foundation, Exxon, and viewers like you. Well, ADL is the hugest food company in the fucking world. You don't think they got issues with GMOs and shit like that? Exxon is an oil company. And isn't it funny that PBS now, the last 10 years, they're whatever the narrative is, they just do what the mainstream press does. Even Democracy Now! Fucking sucks. It's like they jumped all over Russia again when that shit was going on. I was like, dude, really? And then these guys, when I see some of these podcasts myself, it's like Pod Save America and shit like that. It's like there's just like their audition tape for CNN or whatever, and it's just garbage.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that I realized pretty early. I grew up in a Palestinian family that were like, look, my parents never voted because they were like, literally, there's no candidate that represents us. Even the Democrats don't represent what we. There's no one who's actually saying anything that we want to vote for.
That's right.
And so I grew up with this really radical political family that was values that were based in super left progressive politics. And so I grew up feeling surrounded by Democrats and feeling like I can't even relate to what you're talking about. This is not... you're not talking about race. You're not talking about the foreign policy in the way that makes sense. You're still supporting all these candidates who are, looking good, saying the right things, but committing drone wars and committing, genocide in the rest of the world. Yeah. Or, assassinating people that we decide to assassinate who aren't serving our interests anymore. And so, going into these countries and playing political chess to steal resources and create imbalances and create chaos, and then be the savior who comes in with some foreign aid, and then, but you have to pay us back on that foreign aid with like insane interest, and you'll never get out of it. It's like we have managed to go into the rest of the world and just manipulate and undermine so many places that when things like 9/11 happen, I'm like, why is anybody
surprised?
Like, surprised by this? Yeah. Like, why is this a surprising event?
Right.
And I had just gotten back from Palestine on September 1st, 2001.
Oh, wow, okay.
And I moved back to New York City. And I was really like, oh my God, you guys can't believe what's happening in Palestine. I like had to get out. It was so intense. The level of violence was really just getting to me, and
Sure.
I needed to take a break. And so I was like PTSD coming back to the US.
Well, you were there like a year and a half, right?
I was there about a year and a half. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And I got there right before the start of the Intifada because, I was like, guys, I'm here. Let's go. Like, let's fire it up. I have impeccable timing. I was like, maybe this is the way Palestinians are greeting me. They're like, you want to know what's really going on? All right, we're about to start things.
And then the actor side of you is like, is this all over me, you guys?
Is this because of me, you guys? I was like, what is going on? I thought I got, because when I went when was this? It was like when they were thinking there was going to be a declaration of a Palestinian state.
Right.
There was a lot of investment in the West Bank, and a lot of foreigners, a lot of Arabs and Palestinians who were expats were investing in building like infrastructure, because they're like, we're about to declare a state. We're building hotels. We're going to have our, this is going to be a huge celebration. There's going to be people coming back to Palestine, people who want to move back to Palestine, people who want to visit. And so there was this notion that it was like a really exciting time. It was like kind of this giddiness and like, we don't know what's going to happen. And, several months later, of course, the Intifada breaks out. And I get there, and when it's like super party time, everybody's in a great mood, everybody's partying, things are great. Like, people were like, we're about to have our own state. And 5 months later, it's like, there's a curfew. You can't leave your house after 6 o'clock. Israeli Jeeps are coming into town. Like, people are getting rounded up. And now we're erecting new checkpoints. And now you're getting pulled out of your car and held down on the ground at gunpoint and interrogated. And, you can't, everything in town closes because, there's like curfews and,
sure.
And so it was like I feel like it was like the highest, most like jubilant time to like the lowest overnight.
Yeah.
And so for me, I was like, oh wait, I want to like, what is this? So I was really, I don't want to say excited, but I was very, very drawn to living out this experience, because a lot of people were like, I'm leaving. This is crazy. I'm getting out of here. A lot of the foreigners or expats I knew who were there at the time, who like, I went and did a study program at this at Birzeit University, and they were like, okay, we're getting out of here. And I was like, no, I'm absolutely sticking around. And my family's calling me. They're like, all right, it's time to come home. And I'm just like, nope, I'm here. And so I hunkered down and, was protesting at checkpoints and was part of a whole bunch of different groups, especially expats and foreigners who were like, we're protesting with Palestinians to provide some sort of like cover for them, which,
sure.
They're still going to shoot you as a foreigner anyway, is what we found out. We were like so naive at the time, because we're like, oh, they're not going to shoot the blonde Dutch girl, they're not going to shoot the American.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, they are. Yes, they are. And we were definitely like, okay, let's go. Let's fucking get out of here. Like, they were starting to shoot people and get, and we were tear gassed. We were just, it was quite the education. But honestly, it taught me what it is really like to live under occupation. It taught me what Palestinians are enduring on a regular basis, and that your life means nothing. You can be shot, tear gassed, arrested.
Oh yeah. And it doesn't matter. And it doesn't fucking matter if you're an American citizen. And compared to what you went through, I went through romper room. The first Intifada was romper room. I was there for 3 weeks in '88, and the Intifada was only 3 months old, and it was not what you guys had. Like it wasn't. I mean, it was occupation. It was shitty, and I kept getting stuck. And this is like in around late February, March, so it was still cold. People think it's all the desert and a bunch of camels. It's West Bank and Ramallah. It gets cold there. It's cold
sometimes.
Yeah, and so I don't know if they still were doing this when you guys were there, but they had this habit of every time they stopped you, they took your IDs. In my case, my passport was my cousins was like their IDs, and then they would take our shoes. They made us take our shoes off and put them in a little pile, and then they had one guy guard the shoes. And the entire time they're talking to us, we're standing there in socks, and they're asking us all these questions. And then they go, okay, and check out whatever. And then you let you on your way. But it's like 15, 20 minutes of this shit. And this happened like at least 10 times that I can count. But it wasn't this intense. But you did know that you could go to jail. And fuck the American embassy. There isn't one. And the American embassy in Israel isn't going to help me. But it just wasn't as like when I saw what happened and now how it is. I mean, the checkpoints back then were like just, like Caltrans looking, concrete thingies. And it wasn't these towers and barbed wire, and they didn't really fuck with the aesthetic. Ramallah was still cool, cool looking, Jerusalem was still pretty, Bethlehem was still pretty. And now it's like, I see this stuff on TV. I'm going, God damn, it's just like it's almost as bad as Gaza.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and this is the thing, like, also, there was this false sense that, like, wait, the Palestinians control the Palestinian territories, so why are they fucking up? Like, if they just controlled their own territory and took care of themselves, then took care of their own people and stopped fucking with Israel, then, everything would be fine. And it's like, no.
Wow.
And that's what, I hear that from people all the time. And I'm like, you seem to have a very false understanding of what's happening on the ground, because number one, Israeli military have outposts all through the West Bank.
Yeah.
And so there is no such thing as it's like we're under Palestinian rule, wink, wink. And then it's like 5 minutes later, an Israeli jeep comes in and just arrests people and tears shit up and starts shooting people and dropping bombs and things. And you're like, oh, okay, where's the Palestinian police force? And,
well, that was the point of Oslo. That was the point of the PA. The PA is nothing but a tool of Israel. I mean, the PA is nothing but a security force. Absolutely. And so there is this idea that it's like there's this contiguous Palestinian land. No, it's completely broken up with settlements, settler roads, police stations, military stations, jails, like throughout. There is like not even contiguity from one town to the next. So it's like you're going to go to the next town, there's a ton of checkpoints you have to go through. That's right.
When it's a town that's like 10 minutes away, you're like, oh, that town's 3 miles away, but I've got to pass through 2 checkpoints to get there. So fuck it, I'm not going there. And so by completely breaking up any sense of like Palestinian contiguity, it's like we have no power. We're completely divided. We have no ability to rule over our own territory and but the propaganda keeps, well, the Palestinians have rule over their own territory. Like, why can't they, get their shit together and vaccinate their people? Well, because you control every border, you control the land, you control the airspace.
They control the medicines going in. They control everything.
Everything coming in, everything going out, imports and exports. You control from city to city and town to town. Like, there is no such thing as like any sort of undivided Palestinian entity.
Right.
And I think that is where you kind of need to be on the ground to see what's going on, to really understand that's the reality.
Sure. And to your point though, that's the point that you were making earlier. That's the American narrative in the media here. Right.
Absolutely.
And even this last spring, I knew as soon as they said the word ceasefire, like there's all these protests in the world, not just America, but in the world, people were protesting. And I'm like, wait till they say ceasefire. Watch what happens. And as soon as they said ceasefire, everyone's like, oh, okay, it's all better now. And then they ignored it. And they're still bombing people. They're still doing the shit. But they said ceasefire. So I was like, oh, okay, it's over now. And we protested. Boy, that fixed that. And it's like that narrative is always pushed, and especially with the right wing and the Democrats are basically Republicans. They say the same shit. The Palestinians can't get their shit together and blah, blah, blah. And it's just, especially with the West Bank doesn't exist. It's been, like you said, completely decimated and pockmarked with settlements and settlement roads and soldiers guarding those roads, and it's just, yeah, man, it's a fucked up situation. And no one on the left, if they are on the left, if they're about human rights, they cannot ignore the Palestinian situation. Like, I have no emotional attachment to that, to be honest, because my family's weird. So that's a whole long story. That's a whole nother show and a therapy session. So we won't talk about that. But I can't ignore what's going on over there and then, bitch about Venezuela. Right. I can't, cry a tear for Afghanistan or whatever. And, we've been there since 1979, fucking with those people. I can't, without being, understanding of what an abomination, Israel has become, what it is. It's a settler colonial project, pure and simple, not unlike the United States. And just like the United States, they have nothing to be proud of. We have nothing to be proud of here. I like living here. It's convenient, but greatest country on earth and all that bullshit. No, we're not. Not by a long shot. Not by a long shot. You can't name me a country since at least 1950, and I'm being generous. You can't name me a country that we've made better since 1950.
Oh no,
and I'm being generous. I mean, I can go further, but let's just say 1950, right? So, but anyway, well, listen. Hey, in the next few minutes, wrapping up. Is there anything you're working on currently, or what are you looking at doing next a little bit here?
Well, I have been doing a lot. I mean, I've been doing a lot of talking about Palestine these days, and I've been delving into more, like, putting the direction of being more involved in activism. I've still been, doing Zoom shows and weird stand-up gigs when they happen, but those are few and far between. I mean, things are, I feel like we're in this very weird COVID limbo, which, I think people think that there's going to be some definitive answer of where things are going to be. And it's we're going to live in COVID limbo for the next 3 to 5 years minimum, I think.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. No, I don't know, man. Jury's out for, I don't know, because as soon as I think I know, then I don't know. I just kind of keep my mouth shut about that because I don't know.
I mean, viruses are smart. They are, the goal of a virus is to adapt to survive. We're not completely humans. We're not on that page right now. For most of the humans I know, it's not adapt to survive. It's status quo, fuck around, have a cocktail, and hope things get better. We're not especially our society isn't moving in the direction of adapting to survive. We're on this weird autopilot where we think oh, we figured it out and now we can just sit around and fuck around with our electronics and have brunch and not give a fuck, and while the rest of the world burns and our climate is out of control. And so I think because I'm an optimist.
You seem to share my cheery point of view, and this show's called The Bitter Truth, not The Big Wet Kiss. So I get you.
Yeah. So I feel for me, it's been a rough couple of years, and I am very curious. Is there more going on in the U.S. than my perspective of who we are as Americans? Because I have to be honest, I've grown up very. I'm a coastal elite, as they say. I spent a lot of time in big cities and on the coast. I haven't really traveled through most of the U.S.
It's a cool country. I grew up in L.A., born and raised. I'm an L.A. kid. It's a cool country, and there's a lot of weirdness. You will see some weirdness. There's certain little towns that I'll drive through. I'll pay cash and not use my credit card because my real name's on there. I've had a couple times. Abdelhadi, what kind of name is that? That kind of shit. And you go, woo, diddling, ding, ding, ding.
Let me get out of here before I get
squeal like a pig. You got a pretty mouth. Hey, get your ass over here, boy. But no, it's it's there's a lot to it. You know, it's a pretty unique place. And just sadly though, we have one of the worst systems in the world, and we have one of the worst education systems in the world. And in the last 40 years, I want to say, I'm probably being generous when I say 40 years, but we've developed this fear of intellectualism to an alarming degree, you know, since at least the 70s. But I remember, and I'm not a Jimmy Carter fan per se, because he was kind of a crap president too, but you know, he had solar panels on the White House. This is the American mentality. He had solar panels on the White House. A lot of people don't know this.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he first year he was in there, he installed solar panels at the White House because he thought, hey, that'll save a lot of energy, because the White House takes a lot of energy. And then Reagan comes in and he dismantled and took the solar panels off the White House.
Wow.
Right. That tells you. And then people cheered that. I was in high school when Reagan got elected, and they're on, yeah, see, no, we don't need that shit. We can go bomb more people and take their fucking oil. Right.
Let this call me make your own resources. No, we're not doing that.
Yeah.
We're not using natural resources.
Self-sufficient. Fuck that. We're gonna run over those little brown people, take all their shit for free. God damn it. That's America. And that was the attitude. I remember I was in college, my one roommate, we were getting this big discussion, and, you know, we were arguing about El Salvador, because back in the day, you didn't have internet, right? And this is before Gannett and all these guys took over the LA Weekly or the LA Reader. You know, now it's a big, like, you know, now the Village Voice is owned by the same company that owns the Austin Chronicle and the LA Reader, and the LA Weekly, rather. Reader's gone. But, you know, they all say the same shit now. Whereas back in the day, if you wanted to know about Nicaragua or El Salvador or Palestine, you read the LA Reader, right? Because the LA Times is full of shit, right? So that's where I got most of my shit from. And the Christian Science Monitor, ironically enough, that was actually a real newspaper. And it worked. And so anyway, I was arguing with my roommate. I was about 19. And he was just like, he goes, well, if you don't like, why don't you go back where you came from? Like, well, I was born in LA, you idiot. What the fuck are you saying? You know, and I can say what I want because I was fucking born here. 12-year-old.
I mean, I like to say, look, we're dying to go back Palestinians are literally dying to go back to where we came from. So just fucking let us go. Like, you want to send us all back to where we came from? We're down. Yeah. Let's go.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing too, is like, you know, go back where you came from. You're right. But then you got to go back where you came from. Merry old England or fucking Scotland, where the fuck you came from. Because you're not an American Indian unless you live in a wigwam. You know, you're a teepee. You're not from here. Fucking Irish, Ukrainian fuck. You know, and that's the kind of thing that people don't want to hear. Like, and they don't want to hear, you know, what we did in this country. It's always, oh, that was in the past. Well, we still pay for it. We still pay for it.
It's always, why can't you guys get over it? Why can't you guys move on and get over it? It's like, what?
Right.
Why? What kind of reality is like, oh, you know, African Americans need to really get over this slavery thing. They can't hold this over us forever. It's like, okay, what is wrong with you? Like, what is happening now is a direct result of that. Your denial of reality. Right. It's like this denial of like privilege and the reality on the ground, that your actual position is on the backs of other people and other civilizations. Right. And so at this point, it's like, yeah, we're living on the backs of like all the Native Americans that we've pretty much massacred or put into concentration camp reservations or whatever we want to call it. And so it's this like complete, like, I'm an American. Oh, really? Are you? Because no, the Native Americans are the real Americans. Right. So why don't you, like, what, when they tell you to go back to where you came from, what's your response going to be to that? And so it's like this inability for us to even have any critical thinking about the realities of our times is what I'm talking about. And so I find myself in this weird position where, as a performer and a creator, I feel very frustrated and pissed off all the time, and I'm like, that's not really helping to inform my work. And so I'm on the verge of preparing a sabbatical time where I'm gonna take some time off and travel around the country in a van with my pets and see if I can. I know, it's hilarious.
How many pets do you have?
Okay, 2.
Oh, okay.
I only have 2.
Okay,
you wanted me to be like 16. Like I
was waiting for like the crazy cat lady. Well, I have 11 cats and
3 parakeets. Yeah, I got 3 parakeets, a cat, a parrot, a talking bird that sits on my shoulder. I'm just gonna roll up to like bumfuck nowhere and be like, "Hey, I'm an Arab with 17 parakeets." No, I have a dog and a cat. And I don't know if they're going to survive this trip. But my game plan is just to get out there and see what's happening in the rest of the country.
Sure.
And do I really I feel sometimes frustrated with what's going on, and like we were saying, I can definitely be nihilistic or bitter about things, but it's as a creative person, is there I feel like people rant a lot. I feel like a lot of comedians and a lot of performers are ranty, and they want to talk shit about all the things that are wrong, but nobody's providing any sort of solution to okay, what's better? What's the better situation? Where's the upside? What can we be doing differently? And I feel like even in activism, I feel like it's that way. It's you're constantly protesting against something, but what are you putting forth as an agenda? And then when they do, and
we got to wrap up here in a little bit here, but then when they do, they get knocked down for it. If you're going to protest for Medicare for all, right? The progressives in Congress, they come down, they get on the news and say why this would never work and blah, 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 blah. Right. And so even if you do for something, I think, to your point, I think the issue, there's a quote, anger has two daughters, hope and courage, right? The hope to, think that it could be better, and the courage to go do something about it.
Right.
And I think when you see a lot of the ranting without a solution, and this isn't a slam, it's just, I think what happens, people, they lose courage and they lose hope. So it's easy to just be mad and angry and mean, and I fall into that. I go through spaces like that all the time. Yeah.
So I'm going on a road trip with my pets to figure out where the hope and courage exists. And if I don't find it, then I'm going to go marry an Irishman and go get some EU citizenship.
Get some health insurance.
Get some socialism. I'm please take care of me. Let the state take care of me at least.
Get some health care in Ireland and do Shakespeare in the Park.
Exactly.
There you go. Hey, folks, my guest has been Jennifer Jajeh, and we've been kind of chopping it up here. Again, you can support the show at thebittertruth.info, or you could go straight to Patreon and help out there. There's a lot of things you can do to help us out. That'd be great. We appreciate it. And as always, if this stuff makes you uncomfortable, it's supposed to. Sleep tight.